All right, welcome everybody. My name is Ed Hoops, Chairman of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission. We will now convene the March 3rd, 2022 meeting of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission as required by General Law, Chapter 30A, Sections 18 through 25, and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. The public are able to attend this meeting either in person or via the alternative public access. Members of the public may watch the meeting live in Channel 18 or watch and/or participate in the meeting hosted in Zoom. The meeting notice provides necessary instructions to join the meeting via Zoom. Please note that audio, video, and screen sharing functions will be disabled for all attendees. You may request to participate by using the raise hand function. Tom is not going to be here for a while, but otherwise that we have a quorum of 6 present. I will now call the meeting to order. And so our first order of business is an executive session. So we will be entering an executive session. Once we come out of that executive session, we'll return to the regular session. It shouldn't be too long, I hope, but we will be back shortly.
So we're going to go into the room B at the back there.
Oh, we're leaving. Yeah. Yep.
All right, if everybody would come to order, we're going to come back into regular session, and
We're riding the spring.
we are going to start right back up with a request for determination of applicability. Robert Wilkins, 57 Wharf Lane, Yarmouth, proposed installation of an LP gas tank and standby generator within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland and within land subject to coastal storm flowage.
Thank you.
Mr. Perry,
Mind leading off?
thank you for waiting.
No trouble there. It was enjoyable in the back with all my old friends. It's like a reunion of the engineering surveying profession here on the Cape. So 30, check myself here, no, 57 Wharf Lane. I was contacted by the owner who had already made some progress with a energy supplier for a standby generator with an in-ground LP tank. And I know there'd been some discussion about, is there gas on the street? Why do you need that LP tank? And apparently the gas line is quite far away, costly. And he has decided to go with a little sketch. They provided to me some locational desires and some trees to look out for, but otherwise they want a standby generator that'll be elevated slightly on a slab. And Kelly asked a very good question about the original location for the LP tank being in the flood zone. And after discussing that topic with the installer, he's done a lot of them. A lot of seasonal cottages are often in flood zones, so they anchor these things with helical screws and cables, but we didn't want to do that. And so we've moved the LP tank out of the flood zone. Even though it was borderline, the clay soil there probably would not allow for a lot of seepage. And so it was low risk, but now that LP tank's out of the flood zone. And on the plan, we just suggested that you use a straw wattle that could be staked. It's a fairly quick job, would occur directly from the street. And there shouldn't be any problem going right into the growing season. So that lawn area where it's being proposed would be seeded over, and probably within 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, you'll have a grass cover there. So that's what's going on. Happy to take your questions.
I've got no problems with or questions with this one, but Bob, I will ask you, have you been making it seems 25 years ago, the plans were much easier for me to read.
Yeah, this
Making
was
them smaller or something, is that?
this was a job. They came to me, they had this guy all lined up, and I just did what I could to get an RDA application together and keep it as small and simple as possible.
All right. Anybody questions?
No questions.
Kelly, anything?
No.
Anybody in the audience have any comments, questions? Anybody on Zoom? Don't see anything. Would somebody like to make a motion for a -2 and a -3?
So moved.
Sorry, yeah, the generator's still in the flood zone, right? So it is a -2 as well.
The
Right? Yeah, it is. Isn't it?
the generator is in the flood zone.
Okay.
It'll
so
be
yes,
elevated above.
-2.
That's why I was saying it was so
Sorry.
small.
Just checking.
My eyesight, that's all.
Yeah, I'm having the eye thing too. I
Save
got 2 new ones.
That's right. So a motion for a -2 and -3 by Ellie, and who
Well,
seconded?
that was Rick.
Or Rick, sorry, who seconded?
I'll second.
Okay, Ellie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. I
Thank
know
you,
Mr.
Bob.
Wilkins will be grateful.
And the COC requests are
They are in
pending?
process.
Wonderful, thank you.
Next order of business is a continued notice of intent continued from February 3rd, 2022 for SE 83-2314. John Patrick Python and Julia Lauman for 31 Grist Mill Lane, Yarmouth. Proposed raise and replace a single-family dwelling with elevated foundation, new driveway, and alterations of existing septic system within riverfront area buffer zone to salt marsh and land subject to coastal storm flowage. Have a request to continue this till March 17th, 2022. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved, David.
Is there a second?
Second, Ellie.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
No sign.
No signing. Next order of business is another continued
Just
notice of
yes.
intent from February 17th, 2022 for Alexander Nemanoff for 2 Buttercup Lane, Yarmouth. Proposed raise and replace of a single-family dwelling with new septic, landscaping and mitigation within the buffer zone to a coastal bank and salt marsh. We also have a request for a continuance on this one, requesting to March 17th, 2022. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
6 already.
Amazing.
Moving right along.
Next order of business is another continued notice of intent,
What sign?
continued from February 17th, 2022 for SE 83-2319 Patricia Dent, 5 Yarmouth. Proposed reconstruction of existing bulkhead within land under the ocean, coastal bank, land containing shellfish and land subject to coastal storm flowage. Mr. Burgess,
Yes, good
I think
evening.
we're all set now, aren't we?
I believe so. I'm here in uniform, ready to answer any other questions you might have.
All right, it looks like we've gotten all the updates that we've asked. Are there any questions from the commission?
The second plan.
Is there a second plan?
Sorry,
Is there a second plan?
there was the plan that included the planting plan that was in your packets. And then that plan was updated again after you got your packet, so you haven't received the updated plan. I think there are copies of it in the file if you want to look at it. It just replaced the seaside daisies with
With butterfly milkweed, I think.
butterfly.
I think you want to pass them all down. Okay, that's it then.
Updated plan? We are.
I get
That's the updated one. You have a new one too?
New one.
Are we gonna know what?
Yeah.
I'm down.
It was just one
Really?
plant substitute, so it's not-
Yeah, really, the revised plan is showing the
Notes.
buffer strip planting plan.
Yep.
It's just showing the, what is the date, what's the coastal seaside daisy? We're replacing that with,
Yeah, I guess we found out, you guys always know I'm not a plant guy. So Kelly pointed out that she didn't think it was native, and I looked it up and I'm like, yeah, it's native to the West Coast.
Yeah.
I've used it before out here, but at any rate, I just made a quick substitution to the milkweed. thinking it'll add
okay,
some
there you go,
more-
that was the milkweed.
Can you point out where the difference is?
It's, the planting list is the lower
Oh, it's
left,
just the planting list.
mid left on the plan.
Okay.
Sorry. I
Other
made the
side.
point. I had it.
You're not looking at the right one. I think.
Yes, right.
It's the,
Okay. Thank you.
okay, anybody else have any questions? You're all set?
Well, that just include the DMF conditions, replacement in same footprint, using
Okay,
erosion control and working from upland as much as possible.
all right, so is there somebody who'd like to make a motion to approve the plan with special conditions as specified?
So moved.
Oh, thank you. And then,
I'll second it.
all right, so we'll,
Was that,
Yeah. It was Ellie and then me.
no, wasn't it Pat? It was Pat.
Okay. Who made the motion?
Pat made the motion.
I made the motion, and we both made the motion at the same time.
I saw Pat's lips moving, so,
Who seconded?
That was true.
and then David seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those, all those opposed? Very unanimously.
Put it in Zoom land.
That's an- anyway.
Signing 2. Next order of business, also another notice of intent continued from February 3rd, 2022 for SE 83-2315 Thomas and Lisa Dwyer, 160 Mayflower Terrace, Yarmouth, proposed reconstruction of existing pier, ramp, and float within salt marsh, land under salt ponds, land containing shellfish, and land subject to coastal storm flowage.
Yes, for the record, Mark Burgess again, Shorefront Consulting, representing the Dwyers. So we were asked to move the dock so it would be more in compliance with the required setbacks. We did that. It's moved to the south side of the patio. And because the concrete retaining wall is a little bit higher, the dock's going to be raised higher so the decking meets the level of the top of the concrete wall. But the applicant would like to put a 4.5 by 5 foot wooden landing there so that you can step from the patio. Instead of onto the uneven grass, you could step onto a level small deck surface and then up onto the dock. We looked at the section line. Dan's company redid the section. It's almost identical as far as the depths go. So there's no difference in the depths on the float. We do, however, span a couple of feet, about 5 feet less marsh. So there is an advantage to moving it there that way. The setback to the southern dock is now 79 feet. The setback to the northern dock is 90 feet from dock to dock, but 67 feet to the float. The float wasn't surveyed, so I still can't put it on the plan, but relatively speaking, it's certainly better than what was there then. And then if and when that other dock is ever reconstructed, I'm sure you'll ask them to move it and it will be in compliance. And then I also paced out the distance between that pier and the abutting pier to the north. It's about 125 feet. So he has 50 feet of wiggle room that he can move that dock to the north when the time comes. And there's no extra docks or anything. They're just all, the two of these are just going to, well, ours is going to shift. That was about it. The applicant wanted me to say respectfully that he understands why you wanted to move this to this location. He is concerned that now the old concrete seawall is now right in front of the dock. And if that seawall fails, it's going to take out his brand new $60,000 dock. Now the wall is anchored, and I suggested to him, I said, find a same spot each year that you can measure from the edge of the concrete back to your house. And if that starts to move, call me. It does have anchors, so I wouldn't expect a catastrophic failure. So if it shifts, we can deal with that. But that's the main reason. Now those two are sort of tied together structurally. He's really concerned about it. He understands your concerns, but he just wanted to point that out, that that's one of the consequences of moving it here.
I think that's a fair means of watching and monitoring it. So I think that's a good suggestion.
And we eliminated 2 piles because over there with the piles are going to be land with the marsh. Here, we're going to put the dock and rest it on a ledger board that'll be bolted to the concrete wall. And we'll make sure it's wide enough so that the stringer sits not right up against the wall. So that in theory, there should be some movement allowed there, like a bridge, where you can move. We'll do the best we can to allow that, but nature's nature, and it could move.
Okay, any questions from the commission?
I have a question, Mark.
Yeah.
What experience have you had with the enclosed flotation billets instead of just the blue foam that we know breaks down and spreads around the environment? Have you installed any of the floats with those black tubs?
There are some towns that require them now.
I brought it up recently, and I'm hopefully our regulations will require that at some point.
The only thing they still have to put the skids on the bottom of the float.
Indeed,
Because
yes.
they'll get torn up instantly.
Yep.
The contractors are kind of 50-50. I thought if they got a hole in them, then that they would sink. And they said, no, you can, not always that you will, but you can get them with foam on the inside.
Yeah,
So
that's
if
what
they-
I've seen.
Huh?
Well, I've seen them with the foam on the inside,
Yeah,
so,
so if they do spring a leak, they're not going to sink.
okay.
So there is a way. I don't know that, obviously if barnacles get on there, you have a way to scrape them off.
Right.
Um,
We just don't have small parts of foam in the environment is what I'm
I know.
looking for.
It's especially important if floats are going to be in permanently because the ice will tear up the blue stuff.
Right, right. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm a fan. It's okay. You know, I mean, I'm a fan of the black plastic.
Any other questions?
No, just recommend issuing the order with the DMF conditions and the other special conditions.
Okay, anybody in the audience? Nobody in Zoom? Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the project with special conditions as mentioned?
So moved.
Second, John.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Next order of business is another continued notice of intent, continued from February 17, 2022 for SE 83-2323 Alberto and Becky Ann Maitino, 84 Homer's Dock, Yarmouth, proposed construction of a pool patio and septic upgrade within the buffer zone to an isolated wetland.
Two.
Evening, Chairman Hoops, members of the commission. This one, I think we'd pretty much settled at the last meeting. We had discussed just adding some woody shrubs and a revised landscape plan. And so we did that and passed it in, and hopefully this will meet your approval. I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have them. Dan Odula from Downkeep Engineering for the record.
Thank you, Dan. Before I forget, just to remind everybody, this is a bylaw only filing. It's bylaw only.
There are two that's been
Questions?
signed.
You're all good. Kelly?
No, I didn't have any additional questions.
Okay, anybody in the audience? In Zoom? If not, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the project with special conditions?
So moved, David.
All those in, sorry, second?
Second, Ellie.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thanks,
Thank you
Dan.
very much.
And Dan, we're on for Beechwood, right, on Tuesday?
Yes. Oh, good. Yeah.
Seconded, huh?
Ellie, I
David,
first did.
And then Ellie seconded.
Just one.
Next order of business is a notice of intent for Bass River Property LLC, 222 Pleasant Street, Yarmouth, proposed reconstruction of an existing pile-supported pier, ramp, and float within land under the ocean, coastal beaches, salt marshes, land containing shellfish, and land subject to coastal storm flowage.
Are you collecting green cards?
Sure. If you have them, we'll take
I
them.
have them. I know I do.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. For the record, I'm Bob Perry, Cape Cod Engineering, working with the Lloyd family. Their applicant technically is the trust that the family's, the ownership of this property. What we have at 222 Pleasant Street is an existing pile-supported pier with a platform, ramp, and float. It's been there for quite some time. I can't tell you exactly what the term of existence is, but it was licensed in 1991, but it was licensed as an existing structure. Kind of had some repairs after certain storms. It's been weathered, and their desire is to replace it just as it is, but there are common improvements. Those relate to general thinking of the Division of Marine Fisheries to see docks elevated more, wider plank spacing. We're going to a 12-foot span for the pile bents. I think today they're 10. And other than that, there's no significant change. The salt marsh deposit that you see there is actually we mapped out the extent of it. it's fairly thin salt marsh, is sort of a sandy area, and some of the salt marsh might be obscured by shoaling sand. I think the elevation improvement should have a beneficial effect. I think DMF may be looking for a inordinately high deck elevation, but we've boosted it 1.5 feet from what is there today. As you've seen, many docks on the river are built from a barge. And so except for the inshore poles, this would be barge-based. There's plenty of water to get the barge in.
Great if you can bring that up, 'cause I can't.
But there's no increase in the size or anything. It's just a reconstruction of an existing pier. Probably take about 2 weeks to have this done entirely. So that's what we're proposing. And without taking too much of your time, I'll just say I can answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Bob. Just for the record, everybody, we have received the DEP numbers, so it's SE 83-2326. We have received DMF comments as well, and Waterways came back with a unanimous approval. With that, would somebody like to, anybody have any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Excuse me, did you consider a monopile fiberglass design?
No, I'm concerned about monopoles. I've seen them before. They do have some measure of instability, and I believe they would have to be set very, very deep. And you're just increasing the size of the equipment that you'd need to do that installation. And I've got no experience with that.
Just for a point of information, Mark Burgess has installed a number of those composite pilings with good success.
Well, composite pilings for a two pile bent. No, there's no objection to that, except that it's non-traditional and it can be done. The owner was, I think, expecting to have a more traditional but untreated lumber. So I have a feeling that the preference would be for Greenheart. I know your thinking on that is that it's an unsustainable rainforest product item. I'm not sure that I can agree to any particular type of piling without taking it up with the owner.
Thank you. Tom?
Anybody else?
Well, I brought this up at the waterways, that when you redo the docks, we like to have them in the regulation conform to our current regulations, which would eliminate the platform at the end of that.
Right, that would also be consistent with the current DEP licensing. They wouldn't be licensing anything like that, but we do have, admittedly, what I guess the word would be anachronistic docks that have these features.
Mhm.
The improvements that we can make to them for elevation, plank spacing are benefits. I don't think we're going to see any agreement on the part of this applicant to do anything with their platform, since they use it intensively for recreation. And I know you may find there are applicants that might want to save money, that may want to see your way. But I think it'd be a hard sell for this particular case to get the applicant to do anything to diminish the platform. They've got 4 children, I think, with grandchildren, and they're using this dock for
How does that affect our
all the
future
things that you'd
applications?
use a dock for. And
Well, I'm familiar with some that we have made get rid of the platform, and they've had large families too. to
I don't know of any of those. I know we had one with me recently where we reduced the size of the platform. It was 2 docks to the south from here. But that was one of the cases where we reduced the platform. I think it was 36 square feet, and we were adding float. And I discussed this with the applicant in this instance. Of course, they've got a 16-foot float that they'd love to be 24. And I discussed the case that I'm mentioning to you at 232. And it was decided that the platform is important enough that they don't need to have a maximum size float. And as you would know, that will translate, at least for now, into the vessel. The vessel that's going to be here isn't going to be a big boat. It's not going to be on a 24-foot float. So when we get into these discussions, we do have trade-offs, and the platform is very, very important to them. And I'm proposing it to be constructed higher, but to the same dimension.
That's all I have.
Anybody else? Kelly?
So just a couple of things. The dock appears to be just over 4 feet above the marsh substrate at its lowest point. And DMF in their comments have recommended it be elevated at least 6 feet to reduce salt marsh impacts. They recommend barge activities should avoid grounding or operation in shallow water less than 2 feet. So I recommend allowing barge work at high to mid tide. I think there is a decent depth of water at the end of the dock. I think David had already mentioned consideration of a design that has less impact, such as a monopole design, and the use of other materials. And then just reiterating from the regulations that unpermitted structures, when reconstructed, should be done so in compliance with the regulations, which I think is where Ali's comments with regard to the 4-foot maximum width is from. And that's all the comments I have.
Okay. Anybody else?
Well,
Any,
I'm a little concerned about, and Kelly just brought it up, the idea of the monopole, whether we should push that a little bit more. Maybe I'm by myself on that, I don't know, but
May I clarify? You mean a single pole support
Yeah.
T? So
Yeah.
it'd be a T, but
I have some experience with them, Bob, and they're pretty effective, really are. Just,
yeah, I think there's risk, and I don't disagree that it can work. But when we have river currents and moving ice, I'd be wary that a two post bent just seems to be traditional. And you pick up, you're going to save about half the piles. They might have to be a little bigger, but you'd probably salvage 10 or 11 square feet of bottom. And I think it's an interesting idea, but I don't think it's going to work here. And I'm not trying to put your idea off. I think it's worthy of consideration. And I'm thinking about it as I speak with you, but I don't believe it's for this location. We've got some pretty good moving current through here. I've seen that they use in long salt marsh catwalks. And even those needed to be braced, and the braces affected the flow and the salt marsh. It was just, I thought it was interesting, but a little bit too much to go through.
The ones that we saw recently, we saw one that Mark Burgess did. That was on Mayflower Terrace, was it, I think?
I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, so obviously you don't have the same currents there.
No currents. Mayflower
Oh, no
Terrace is,
currents, yeah.
Dinah's Pond is a still water, and Kelly's Bay would
On
be
the other
mostly
side,
still water.
They still have the ice.
Reduce your shading.
True, but it's not coming through at
make
4 miles an
donations.
hour.
It's just whether it's
Greener.
feasible in that location, I guess.
just to let you know, Mark, in the past, some people have, when they use Greenheart, have made a donation to sustainable.
So a mitigation
Yeah.
payment? Huh,
We have a lot of experience with that. Been pretty common.
That's interesting. Yeah, I was, before the meeting, I was looking for options, alternatives to the common use of the Greenheart. And I just think we have applicants that are going to be trying to be more traditional. And there should be no requirement that it be Greenheart, just that it not be what is prohibited. So during the evolution of cost estimating and all of that, you might find that we use something other than that. It's,
Paul?
Yeah, just, could you review, maybe Kelly again, the possible elimination of the 8x16 platform? I know that was discussed, but maybe just to kind of explain that again. I mean, it seems that, unless I'm understanding, that's what the regulation calls for a maximum of 4 feet wide.
But yeah,
And
so,
yet
yeah.
There's the family wants to keep the 8x16, so if the regulation calls for one thing, isn't that what is required?
So yeah, the wording of the regulations is that unpermitted structures may not be reconstructed, improved, or extended without approval of the commission and compliance with the regulations. And the dock has never received a permit because I believe it predated the regulations.
but it was licensed, and it was licensed at a time when I think it would have had to been recognized by the commission in order to get licensed. In 91, we were going through the amnesty process, I recall it, and DEP wanted something. It may not be an order of conditions, but it might have been a letter
Yeah.
from the agent at that time that the dock wasn't didn't just show up.
Hmm.
So acceptance, acknowledgement, and then licensure.
You know, that was 31 years ago too. Things change, but
So I guess that's my question. Have things changed to the point where we could ask for an adherence to the regulation of no more than 4 feet? Or is it,
I think that was the intent of the regulations, was to bring older docks that are being reconstructed back into compliance with the current regulations.
yeah, okay,
Mhm.
all right.
And the way that's been administered also matters. And as we discussed, we had a case, you probably were on that case with 232 Pleasant Street, where we have a platform, but the applicant wanted the maximum size flow. And the way the commission handled that was I made recommendations before we even filed it, which was knowing we were going to have a larger vessel, we moved the dock inland so that the net gain of area of the float would be zero for what was actually out into the river. But then there was a discussion at the meeting about the platform. And the conclusion was that the platform would be reduced, not completely commensurate, but almost as a trade-off to the increased float size.
Yeah.
So in this case, the applicant would prefer to keep the platform and not increase their float size, and believing that the elevated nature of the platform, it's going up another 1.5 feet. So whatever shading effects are caused by that, which is really the only impact, there are several square feet of pile area, but mostly shading, which some consider to be beneficial. We're mitigating that slightly, but I don't have anything to gain from, or the applicant has nothing to gain from reducing or taking away the platform. Therefore, I think in light of other decisions that the commission has made, this is just a straight rebuild. No one is asking for a larger float. Therefore, no one's asking for a reduced platform. It's if you were to mandate that they remove that platform to be, if indeed it's consistent with your regulations, it would just be inconsistent with the last project that I brought before you. So
So this basically would be a variance to the regulation that we allow them with the platform.
Yeah, so I guess one approach could be that it's called out as a condition that the float size could not be increased above the current, I think, 128 square feet in perpetuity, basically, as long as the platform exists. And then the two are kind of balancing each other out. I guess maybe the negative to that is that the platform is a permanent shading structure and a float is a seasonal shading structure. And then I'm not sure what the difference in square footage is there without doing that calculation, but that's one way it could be handled, is if it were required that they were not able to increase that float size in the future, it had to remain at the float size it's at, then you're kind of balancing the shading impacts.
If they were to come for a float increase, this topic would be right back in front of you. And it would be more logical that something would come off to balance it.
Well, it's
don't
a
see it working.
variance,
I don't
and
I
it's
don't see it.
also setting a precedent for any of the other docks that have the big platforms that.
Well,
are still out there.
I will point out, just to muddy the waters a little bit more for you. We are supposed to take each case, we assess each case, especially in
It's in
cases of variances, on a case-by-case basis. So just because we did one for one thing does not necessarily mean you have to follow it,
Right.
as long as you have, if you're, again, looking at balancing the positives and negatives of the project. So that's what you're looking at. You know, we're not a court of law, so we don't, precedent, not to say precedent isn't important, but we should be looking at each case on its own merits as well. So that's all I have to say on that. Anybody in the audience? In Zoom? Any further discussion among the commission? Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the project with special conditions? Because you make the motion doesn't mean you have to vote in favor of it, folks, but I do need somebody to make the motion so we can move it.
I agree.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I have a question on the, before it's seconded. Part of the special conditions are the fact that the float cannot be increased in size in the future, right?
I don't think we have that, right?
If it's being moved as such.
You're saying you want to add that?
I
to
want to
the-
add
okay,
that,
so-
yes.
And what about the DMF requirement for elevation?
Yes.
Can I speak to that too? We're not looking for a free blank check for this dock, but that we're making 4 feet at the lowest point, or I should say the highest beach. I think we're exceeding 4 feet for most of that salt marsh run. When you begin to boost the docks up, you just begin to look at them. We can do that, but you're looking at it, and this dock runs east-west. Well, I should check my plan before I tell you that.
No, northwest, southeast.
Yeah, so it's running a little bit southeast. So as the sun comes across during the growing season, when we have sun basically rising over here, it's just making a full circle around here. I know that there are considerations for docks that are too close to the ground, but this one is going to be 1.5 feet higher, and it's getting almost wrapped around during the course of a sunny day. There's very much sunlight under here. There hasn't really been super diminishment of the salt marsh. It's just buried by sand because there's a shoal going on here. To make it higher just makes the float work more impractically because it will be far steeper. And the thing has been designed to be functional now, and we are more than meeting the 1-to-1 ratio over the salt marsh. And I know you've heard all these comments from DMF lately. I just don't see that as being that beneficial in this instance. We're only passing over 15 feet of salt marsh. And it's at we can move the dock out of the way of the salt marsh, but then that's a major change to the location, which would throw the license off. And the whole design has been thought out. We get much higher here, and it just begins to be an aesthetic issue. So I don't mean to be bumping up against the information you're getting, but I have good reasons for why it's been set up the way it is.
Would you consider?
Again, aesthetics are not something that we worry about.
I do know that that's one of the
Would you
lowest
consider adding monopole to
docks in
the
the river. It always floods at a moon tide or close to.
It's just so simple.
Yes, one of the reasons we're raising it.
But a foot and a half doesn't seem like it's going to give it very much, especially with the increase in sea level.
It's because it's. a
Well,
larger
it's consistent with the docks on either side.
Thanks, like that.
And the float is rather close to the platform and,
It's really nice.
you know,
So it
it-
scales
I mean,
the height above the salt marsh at the seaward end of the salt marsh, it scales at 5.5 feet. At the landward edge of the salt marsh, it scales
about 4. Should be.
at 4 exactly. Right, so that's just in case anybody wanted to know.
We do think about these things, and I hope you can appreciate the differences with regard to how you've administered other cases with regard to that platform. And I don't want to come off like I'm lecturing to you, because I'm not. I'm trying to reach agreement, and I know the applicant would agree with the change, or to the language change in the motion relating to no increase in the float size. The platform is very important to them.
Okay, is there any further discussion? I'm going to go back and ask David, would you be willing to change or alter or amend your motion to include no expansion of floats?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a motion to approve with special conditions, including no expansion of the floats. Is there a second? Just because you said it doesn't mean-
Second, just to get it out. Second.
Thank you, Tom.
Who's Tom?
All those in favor of approving the project, vote aye. Say aye. Opposed, say nay.
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 I did
Do
not
a
say
hand
anything.
vote on that?
You said
I
nothing,
just said nothing.
so you're abstaining?
I need to, yes.
Okay.
'cause
So let the record show there were 6 in the negative with 1 abstention. It does not pass.
Yes, I gathered that. I sometimes ask for a straw poll.
We don't
Well-
do straw polls.
Yeah, well, just to get a feel, I'm an interesting vote, and I thank you for your time.
All right, thanks, Bob.
So just to clarify where that leaves us, so the motion didn't pass. Does that mean it's a denial?
Well, the motion was to approve the project, and it was voted in the negative, so that's a denial,
Okay, and the denial is,
not meeting the regulations, current regulations.
and it's denied under both sets of regulations.
Right. Under state and bylaw.
That would be the state performance standards.
And
next step.
you still sign, but you check the different box, right?
Well, I'll leave you to the next hearing.
All right, thank you, Bob.
Signing anyway?
Sorry, signing 2. Yeah, you're signing, she'll just check a different box. All right, next order of business is another notice of intent for SYNH LLC, 226 Route 28, proposed sewage disposal system upgrade and associated site improvements in the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland.
Good evening. I'm Brian Weiner with Coastal Engineering. I'm a civil engineer, and I put together this plan on behalf of our client, which is the former Howard Johnson site at 226 Route 28. And so the purposes of this request is related to a sewage disposal system upgrade. And in the back of the property, in this area over here. There's a bordering vegetated wetland, and so there are 3 existing septic systems back here. Two of which have various components
Do you use
that
the
are.
microphone? Are you able to hold
Can
the
you, yeah,
microphone?
hold the microphone up.
Sorry.
Just slide it, yeah.
Technical difficulties.
Sorry.
So there's a bordering vegetated wetland in the northeast corner of the property. And there are 3 older systems that service this 44-unit building. And so
Okay, we got it.
2 of them have various components that are in the 100-foot buffer. And so the proposal is, as part of the upgrade for the site, they're going to abandon the leach pits and the septic tanks. But part of the work involves running a pipe to connect where the exits the building plumbing and would come along to the new location, which would be outside the 100-foot buffer. So it's an improvement from the existing condition, and it's work within the 100-foot buffer. It will all remain within existing pavement, existing grass area. It will be restored to existing condition following completion of the work. We've shown typical erosion control to be in place while the work is performed. And I open it up for questions. I
Okay.
think the scope of work is reasonably straightforward.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the commission?
None.
Okay, Kelly, anything?
Nothing.
No, I just recommend including some special conditions related to just maintaining the site during construction in terms of stormwater runoff. So maintaining the entrance to the site with keeping that area clear of any sediment and protecting any catch basins that are in that area down by Route 28, or if there are any catch basins on the site itself that could be impacted during.
Yeah, so the grading, there is a leaching catch basin in this area, so we would protect it. And it's from about this point here that it breaks in the sheet flow, so we'll control that flow. The rest of the site drains towards Route 28.
Anybody in the audience? Zoom? I see nothing. Unless there's further discussion amongst the commission, can I get a motion to approve the project with special conditions and sweeping and or sediment control and sediment filtration barrier and on the drain?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We did get the DEP file number.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. It's like,
And,
just for everybody, so for the record, we did get the SE3 file number. It's, sorry, SE83-2327. Go sign two.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next order of business is stormwater management permit application continued many times.
Many years.
But most recently from February 17, 2022, Rex W 2021-002, Evan Cohen, 125, 133, Route 6A, Yarmouth, proposed redevelopment of an existing commercial site, including parking, drainage, and septic improvements.
Two, please.
Existing building number 125 to be converted to a doctor's office. Existing number 133 will have minimal improvements, including new utility connections.
Be the biggest file I've ever seen.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's nothing compared to the Cape Cod Hospital, but that's all right. So my name is Dan Ojala. I'm a civil engineer and land surveyor with Down Cape Engineering in Yarmouthport. With me is a representative from Cape Wide. If you have any questions of Roger, he can answer them, and they'll be the builders for the project. But this is a nice little redevelopment project. It's a highly developed site right now. You're probably all familiar with it as the Bank of Boston building. So there it is. Here, there's a drive-through, there's a big parking area in the back. The town has been very nice working with us on it. We've actually changed the rear zoning to business so that we can expand the parking lot in the back. There's a nice doctors group that's moving in, and they're Urology Associates of Cape Cod, a very nice group of doctors affiliated with the Cape Cod Healthcare and the hospital. And it'll be a very nice addition to the town. The building's been underutilized lately and a little bit disheveled. So it'll be nice to return it to its former beautiful front. We're pulling the ramp off the front and tidying it up and going over the trim and so forth. Not really in your realm of concern, but it's just nice to see someone putting some money into one of the buildings here in the village. So this is up on the north side. We have went right through site plan review. There's a couple little revisions to the plan. We hit the stormwater as one of the first permits, so we had a little bit of a learning curve there with exactly, how you guys like to do them. There was a reviewer who was more than thorough, I would say, and so we produced volumes of information to help satisfy that review. And now I'm pleased to report through some process. We did make some adjustments to the plan, not too many, but some. The zoning board also had us pull an extra 10 feet off the back to give a little bit more buffer in the back, so we reduced the hardscape just a little bit. But bottom line is there's no wetlands near here. There's no issues with coastal storm flowage. We're not in a zone 2. There's really no stormwater concerns other than, the general mantra in Yarmouth is you don't want to dump any water onto your neighbors. And so we did a nice safe drainage design. It's deep sump hooded catch basins. Those fill the deep sump hooded secondary basins / manholes, and then we do subsurface infiltration. And it's a time tested methodology. We had originally done a rational method. In the review, we went over to HydroCAD, and then the end, we did a brief rational analysis. Again, that's just the technical term for sizing of the stormwater. The town engineer has reviewed the final the comments. We, again, took a little while to address them. I had been on vacation and some other things, but in any event, we got them answered, and then they continued, and then we continued, and a number of times. So back and forth, a little bit of ping pong, but I think we've got it in very good shape now. Again, it's, it's in some respects much ado about not too much, because there's not a wetland nearby. If it ever did flood, there's a low area between us and the bank that would have a little bit of water in it, but it's such a safe drainage design that we figure that even in 100-year event, we wouldn't have a drop leaving the site. Of course, that very much depends on the exact peak of the storm, but this can continuously drain about 4 inches per hour into the ground. So it can take just a tremendous level of storm flowage. And it's been working very well for many years with just a couple of catch basins. It's going to be many more catch basins involved. Out in the front, there is a traditional little drainage issue with the state highway, but we're going to be taking some of the water that runs off of our site and infiltrating that. So that should clean that up. And to the extent that the highway has to clean up their basins and get them functioning a little bit better, I'm sure they will do that. But we worked with the town engineer, Nick, before he had left, to make sure we have a little, like a speed bump on the side of Route 6A. So their water will stay on their side, our water will stay on our side. So we're infiltrating everything on site. Some of the last comments were relative to the operations and maintenance plan. It was hidden, 2/3 of the way through the 465 page, but we had made those revisions. So what we are going to do is sweep it twice a year. Sweeping, you tend to use more salt now than sand, which is good because sand is, it grinds down. There's a lot of TSS. Salt is much more effective, but nonetheless, we'll sweep it twice a year, and that will, it knocks down TSS, which is total suspended solids. And what those are sand and silt particles, clay type substances, pollen, whatever else that, could enter into a stormwater system. Now, one of the nice things about being on Cape Cod is we're blessed with one of the most beautiful sand and gravel aquifers that there is in existence, and it's fairly easy to infiltrate that all on site. So we haven't got muddy rivulets going into a clear water stream with trout in it or anything like that. almost everywhere around the Cape, and especially in an area like this, it's not adjacent to wetland. There's very little chance of that. To finish my thought too, across the street down behind the gingerbread well, I'm not sure, the Optimist Cafe, I believe it's called now. There is a low area there. So even if this were to overtop in a 500-year event, it would never reach the ocean, the salt marsh, because there's a giant bowl that's dry without a wetland in it between us and the ocean. The groundwater is generally to the north. And to finish the thought on the TSS, what you're worried about is pulling out some of those pollutants before they enter an infiltration system. But again, a lot of the time you're worried about it before it, leaves the site. In this case, nothing's leaving the site. The regulations are set up to infiltrate, 0.6, or in this case, like an inch of runoff. Here we infiltrate, the full 7.8 inch 100-year storm on the site. So the only effect that a little bit more TSS would have, it would tend to silt up the drainage a little bit quicker, and would have to strip it out and redo them in, say, 25 years instead of 30 years or something like that. But bottom line is, we're going to sweep the proper amount twice a year per the latest O&M, and that date on that one is revised through 12/28/21. And so that addresses the two, I would say, questions that the town engineer, Amanda Lima, had. So we'll go with option one, which is a biannual sweeping of the lots. That gives you a 10% TSS removal rate, which tips the scales on the system that I have specified here to, in her opinion, is compliant. The infiltration rates, we went over that. That was okay. And again, that O&M also picks up not only the sweeping, but the maintenance inspections of the catch basins. Nick had originally caught that, her subordinate engineer, and we had picked it up, but she just didn't get the latest revision that had that on there. So again, we do now indicate that the sweeping is required and the O&M is in good shape. The group of doctors that's owned it, that has bought it, is anxious to move in. Again, the town has been very nice to work with. The zoning board approved it. The town meeting, Kathy Williams of the planning, actually worked with us to change the zoning in the back so that there's no issues back there. And it'll be a nice use for the property. We're excited about it and looking forward to moving forward. I think the only permit after this is the Mass DOT access permit, because we're doing a little bit with the radius out in the street. But that should be it. We've got Old Kings Highway done and all the other local boards. So we're excited to move forward. And I think our application is complete and approved internally. So you're the final vote on the matter. And I'd be glad to answer any questions if you do have them. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Dan. Questions from the commission?
What's that?
Dan, may I? Is there somebody with you that?
Yes, from Cape Wide. Yeah, he's one of the builders.
Yeah.
Yeah. Roger.
Do the physicians intend to keep the facility on 28, or will they all move to this? Will there be auxiliary?
They have 5.
Say who you are.
Yeah. Roger Brooks from Cape Wide Construction.
Roger.
They have, I believe, 5 locations right now. They just opened an office on Martha's Vineyard. They have one on Nantucket, one in Falmouth, one in Sandwich, and their main office is on Main Street in Hyannis, and that one's going to close, and this will be their main office.
That's what I was interested. The main
Street in Hyannis. Yep.
It's going to close. Okay. Thanks very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Point of curiosity.
And they made sure they've got enough parking this time, because that's a little bit of a tough row to hoe to.
It is at that spot.
Tried to be in there. Yeah, it's a tough one. So we overdid it. Well, not, I wouldn't say overdid, but it's a nice big parking area. And, that way, I know they shot a movie down the street. They can use the back for parking during that. And they have little art shows out in the front. So on the weekends when we're not there, of course, that sort of a nice community feel can continue.
All right, anybody else? Kelly.
The only thing I just wanted to check, so the infiltration, just her comments on the infiltration rate, that was based on removing unsuitable soils
Yes.
during construction.
Yeah, there's some special notes. The soils out here are generally okay, but it is Yarmouth Port, and you get some lenses of silt and clays. And so where we hit those, we're going to strip them out like you would for a septic system, 5 foot around and down till we hit the sand. And in that manner, we'll achieve the full infiltration rate. And that's noted on the plan.
So we just want to make sure, and we can call this out in the permit, that there are inspections carried out during that process.
Yeah, during the construction, yeah. And I'm generally required, yep, to certify the construction. And that would be a good condition to do. And the owners, there's a few little T's to cross in terms of we'll sign the permit, but we'd rather do that after we own the land because the current owner is out, so the new,
And the signing the O&M plan.
yeah, the acknowledgement and the recording of the deed and on the deed against the deed and so forth. So that's I would agree with ESS that could be deferred until the land transfers, and we'll put that on record, prior to the building permit.
All right, anybody in the audience? On Zoom? I see nobody. Unless there's further discussion amongst the commission, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the project with special conditions?
So moved. I'm sorry. Ellie.
Oh, Ellie and Tom.
Yeah.
You guys.
Either way.
Third
time. Either way.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. If anybody needs help moving this file down the way,
That's only half of it.
you can just see Dan. He'll,
Dan's got the cart, huh?
You guys have a target for when it's going to be complete?
We got to get it closed first. So we get a couple legal matters. Yeah, we got to get it closed and then, but these guys are pretty quick once we get rolling, but probably inside of a year, I would just throw out there, So, all right, thank you.
At least by the fall of maybe winter.
Probably in the winter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
all right, next order of business. So moving on to a continued certificate of compliance continued from October 21st, 2021 for SE 83-1477, 63 Smiths Point Road, Yarmouth. It is my understanding that this has been withdrawn.
It has been withdrawn. Yeah, they're going to resubmit once they've completed the new permitting and gotten the way rebuilt.
All right, so we don't have to do anything with that then. Great.
No signing.
Next order of business,
signing.
we have 2 easy certificates, one for SE 83-2083-1377 Bridge Street, Yarmouth, and for SE 83-1975 8 Jesse's Lane, Yarmouth. Do I have a motion to issue
Mr.
those
Chairman?
certificates? Yes,
Take a breath for a second.
I can't.
He's backed
This is
up,
just
it looks
passed
like to
out.
me.
He's having trouble with that heavy file there.
Yeah.
Music or something that you could,
This is a pass.
Smith Point.
do you want to hum something?
That was removed.
So it doesn't
Just realized that I didn't
Throw it in there.
download
Actually,
the
it's
photos.
Yes, I noticed that, but
It's like they're all on my
Yeah,
phone.
I don't want to say anything, or be it for me.
Yeah, they have to come back.
Putting embarrassment upon somebody.
I don't know what
That's the first.
Yeah.
That's where it's going to be from now
Now we're
on.
on
Everything
Now
will
we're on.
slide.
second landing.
Oh, yeah, we're on packet.
I got news for you.
Sure.
We're all set.
We're ready, Mr.
All
Chairman.
right.
You sure?
I think so.
Okay. All right, so do I have a motion to issue the certificates of compliance for SE 83-2083 and for SE 83-1975?
So moved, David.
Is there a
Second,
second?
Ellie.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Next order of business is a certificate of compliance for SE 83-176 for 175 Route 28 Yarmouth.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Kieran Healy. I'm a land surveyor with the BSC Group. I had an email from Kelly earlier today requesting that we continue this until such time as the RDA has been complete and the work associated with the RDA has been complete. The only issue for us is that we filed this because there was the building department required us to file a relief with the Zoning Board of Appeals. The Zoning Board of Appeals held us last Thursday night who would not allow us to go forward unless we had filed this with the Conservation Commission. So I have absolutely no problem with continuing it, but that puts me into a bind with the Zoning Board of Appeals, because they expect us to be complete with the Conservation Commission before we go back to them in 6 weeks. So to possibly make everybody happy, if you will, I would be more than willing to ask for a continuance on this. If the Conservation Commission could maybe write a letter to the Zoning Board of Appeals saying that we have filed the RDA, we have that hopefully approved in a couple of weeks' time, and that we are working on the certificate of compliance. And at the moment, everything is moving forward. And that would possibly allow us to go forward with the Zoning Board of Appeals, which is where we get permission to do the work in the RDA. We can't just do the RDA work without the Zoning Board of Appeals approval as well. So it's kind of a circular item where I need to have a starting point. And if I continue this, I can't go on to the next meeting. So.
Yeah, the Board of Appeals has accepted a memo from me in the past for this type of situation, so I can do that just to say that we have it.
And it was your particular memo that we referred to when they shut us down at the last meeting.
Right,
And that
yeah.
they wanted these items squared away. So which we're working on, and we'll gladly do those items, but we need permission from them to do those items.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult because we don't know if anything's going to come up until we review the COC request. So it's kind of circular, but yeah, based on the review of the COC and the work proposed under the RDA, I'd be comfortable doing a memo to the Board of Appeals to allow them to proceed, and then we can get the RDA approved, the work
Right.
done, the COC issued.
Okay, so we just need to continue it and then you'll do the memo, right?
Well, if you're comfortable
Or-
with continuing, and I know we have this issue with
I
continuing.
know, well,
um,
I'm going to assume that you won't file any appeal because we passed the 21 days because we didn't issue the COC then?
It is not my intention, and
We
I
can
will
get a
inform my
request to
clients
COC.
that it's not their intention either.
Do you want them to get an
We just get a
official
written request to
request?
continue.
Yep,
Will you do that?
I would gladly do that, yes.
Okay,
And the Zoning Board of Appeals hearing is not for 7 more weeks. So that will allow us to get
So
through
we'll be
the
through the RDA.
the RDA and get that, in front of you in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah.
So we don't need we can, with the letter, we don't need to mention the RDA other than the fact that it has hopefully been approved. I don't need the letter next week.
Yeah, I'll do it after the next hearing.
After the next hearing is what I need.
okay, so we're looking for, what would be the date then?
To continue
April?
this to? Well, this will not be until the work is done, right? So
Oh, so it's more than, well, a long time away from now, right?
yes.
Yeah, potentially, literally 3 months or 4 months. They're not going to want to do the work in the prime of the summer either. So, and I don't necessarily want to withdraw it, which would possibly be the easiest thing to do, because that might put me in default with the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay,
So that's the only reason I wouldn't withdraw it at this moment.
all right, well, we have to put it for a date certain.
Do you want to go to the end of the summer then, or?
What's
Or-
the last meeting in August? We'll
The
we'll
18th.
aim for that, right? Is
That's-
that okay?
yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
August
The
18th.
18th of August.
The 8th of August?
And then if we
18th.
need to continue it again, just,
But-
we'll,
And who knows, the work could get done, and if they get a chance in April or May after the CBA hearing, maybe we'll get it done before the summer.
oh, we won't be able to do it until, right? No, I guess we can do it with the COC if they come in early, right?
Or
If they get it done, he's saying if you get it
Yeah.
done early, we can still go ahead and, it doesn't matter. This is just administrative,
Yeah,
right?
so I guess you can just request to go on a different agenda. We just need to receive that request.
All right. So then do I have a motion to continue to August 17th, 2022?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I
Second.
said 18th earlier.
Did we say 18th?
August 18th.
August 18th?
So moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you for your consideration.
All right,
Thank you. We'll
Karen,
see you on
thanks.
Saturday.
You might miss me, but I might be there.
Hard to miss.
That's good.
All right, next order of business is approval of meeting minutes.
I make a motion that we accept the minute meetings of February 17th with 2 typographical errors corrected.
Okay. And you've noted those for
They don't
one
have
of our
to.
scribes or?
Oh, you want them?
As long as you can make it available to whoever
Oh, yeah. I'll
whoever
give-
wants
I'll
to make
give,
that change. I don't know who's doing the changes now. Is it,
Heidi.
are you doing it or are you doing them? You're doing
Heidi.
the change? Oh, Heidi's doing it. Okay. Awesome. Then I guess we don't have to worry about it all anyway around. I will just shut up now. Any further business? I'm sorry.
We need to
Sorry.
vote.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Is there any other business not reasonably anticipated?
No, sir.
Seeing none then, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We stand opposed at 6:49.
Kelly, do you take these and put them inside?
I used to, but they say they do that anyhow.